Hi, Maki. Thank you so much for everything you've done today in particular. I think we might, let's see. Oh yeah, I have 16:59, so I'll go ahead and wait probably another 2 minutes, and then we can go ahead and get going. It may be just us.
Well, that's okay.
Yeah, what's fun is I added a bunch of slides at the back so we can actually see what it looks like and discuss the design thing. So we can actually, it can be a design session.
So is this a picture of like cars parked or cars driving or
Cars stuck in traffic?
Stuck in traffic. Oh my goodness. When was it taken? Do you know?
I think it was actually when they had the lower highway closed because
Right.
of a fire accident or.
Okay. That is really something, that photo. My goodness. For a little village like Holualoa, to have that kind of a traffic jam.
Yeah, but it's our future. But you know what? They're going really slowly. This is actually much safer for pedestrians.
Yeah.
If
No,
there's a shoulder.
They can't
Yeah.
go fast because they're.
Nope.
And
ironically,
bucks
one of
are
the
dead.
best things against speeding is just increase the congestion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, I would like to go ahead and get going so that we have plenty of time and don't have to rush.
Okay.
And I'm getting better at admitting people as they come. So I'm going to kind of slide through the first slide because they're kind of a repeat of the first session. And if anyone's interested in getting a copy of this deck, we can post it online or email it. So, okay, so just that this is the Houlaloa Village, as we all know, and that the Mamalahoa was originally just an ancient Hawaiian trail, and it was never engineered to be a high-speed arterial for people in big trucks and SUVs. They could be blasting through at about 35 or 40 miles an hour. So, and it bifurcates the village, so it creates some challenges for us. And our lanes are typically about 9 feet wide. And now we have some vehicles that are wider than 9 feet, not even including the mirrors, but with the mirrors, they're even wider. So they tend to, as they're speeding, chop the lines, chop the shoulder, chop the center line. So that adds to the safety issue. And it's not a good place for pedestrians to be. So this is a grassroots community effort. In 2018, we started a project called the Holualoa 2020 project. And at the time, Planning Director Yee advised us that the county would never have the resources or priority to go back and do detailed master plans for the historic villages, that they needed to focus on the new developments. And so if we as a grassroots group wanted to diligently put together a master plan, and it reflected a fair number of the people that are interested, then we could submit it to the county and they would likely adopt it. And that actually has been our experience. We did the project, we were meeting monthly, starting in December of 2018, and then we held a town hall at the Eamon Center the following September, and we have been successful. Phase 1A was the shave and pave. If you remember, the steps at the north end of the school went almost down into the lane. If someone were to trip and fall, they would fall right out into the travel lane. And if you had a standard size stroller or anything, people were walking out in the travel lane in front of the school.
So was that successful? Did you actually get the 5-foot wide pedestrian
Oh,
walkway in front of the
yeah,
school.
yeah. So here's a picture of during the project after they shaved it back 8 feet. And they built a
Amazing.
big retaining wall and put in our, you see from here to, I should have actually had the same stretch, but
Well,
it's
that's
5
awesome.
foot. And then we have these little painted, a wider stripe and little painted icon, pedestrian icons with arrows going.
That is so cool. Congratulations, Antu. That's awesome.
Thank you very much. Well, it definitely was a group effort, a community effort, and the county was very willing to support this. It was just, they recognize that it's important. They just don't have the bandwidth to figure all this stuff out.
Right.
So we were delighted with that success, and people have remarked on how nice it is. They've almost forgotten what it used to be like already. So, and that was done in 2019. So we adopted the wide edge stripe separating the two, and like they have done in LEE Drive, the more you can have things that are standard or becoming standard patterns elsewhere so people can kind of understand the visible cues, the more likely they are to kind of comply and go along with it. So phase 1B was the enhanced school zone. The county was already doing enhanced school zones, but Holualoa was near the bottom of the list for all the schools on the island. And so we put together recommendations using the MUTCD guidelines and the county guidelines about how it would look, and made recommendations, and they adopted most of them. So they extended the school zone in both directions to 500 feet, installed flashing lights. We'll do this. So extended, do flashing lights. I cheekily included the traffic laws photo enforced, but we don't have we have enabling laws at the state level, but we don't at the county level. There's a lot of resistance to that they basically have that the fines are higher when they're flashing. And we also moved, if you remember, this crosswalk at the school was right before this sharp intersection that goes up to the houses above the school. It ended in a hedge. You couldn't walk on the shoulder. There is no shoulder there. And it's a long ways from the entrance of the school. So we had to move it and closer to the Catholic Church. And the other school crosswalk was just above the bridge, which is on a curve, and by the Lua lot and by the driveway up to Koyasan. And for the most part, the Lua lot was north of it, so people were disinclined to backtrack to the crosswalk to go into the village. They just run-lined it. So we moved it, and here's where it is now, right by the old library. And this is the Wahipana field trip from the school, visiting the art students, visiting the galleries. An annual tradition we hope will continue.
That's a cool picture, Antu.
Oh, thank you. Isn't that lovely?
I like that. All the red. Is
Oh,
that
they're
the school
Holualoa
colors?
Yeah,
Is that
that's the official Holualoa shirt they produce.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. So they added the crosswalk sign assemblies. This wasn't really our recommendation to do all this with the electronic beg buttons and everything, but that's the standard enhanced school zone pattern system for the county. So they put it in, and okay. So, and then COVID stopped us. We met up through January of 2020, and then COVID descended and the whole thing kind of stopped. Both county's work and our efforts. So DPW had approved raising the 2 school crosswalks onto speed tables. And I'll show you what that is in the next slide. DOE has not approved resolving the pickup, and it's basically the pickup, afternoon pickup safety issue by moving the vehicle waiting queues 100% up onto the school parcel. That needs to be a separate project, and we need some volunteers for that. The county did not approve purchasing the Lua lot that they'd been leasing for about 10 years and establish a school bus stop in front of the Lua lot and build a shelter. We were all prepared to do private contributory funding to pay for some of that, but Mayor Mitch Roth had no interest in buying the lot. So that was
So
the end of
Andrew,
that.
what happened with this resolve? Did not approve the pickup and drop off safety issue by moving vehicle waiting queues into the school parcel. What was the problem with that? Just not enough room or something, or?
No, there are about 2 acres up above the school that could be used. There's a little resistance by the principal Gray. And it would have to have DOE approval. And so it's a project we need to work on. It just wasn't an easy lift. In fact, the whole shave and pave wasn't an easy lift. And basically I had to, after meeting with everybody, and the county was willing, but DOE facilities resisted and was concerned about the liability of shaving the wall back and encouraging people to walk in front of the school. And so I wrote a letter and said the liability of not taking care of it was far greater. And then within a week, it trickled down through the superintendent of schools that it was okay and we could go ahead and let the county do it.
So who owns that? Who owns those 2 parcels above the school?
Oh, no, this would all be on the school property.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if they do a school expansion, it would probably be up into that area. So we're asking to see what their master plan is, because they completed at least a conceptual design
Okay.
last year. So
Okay.
yeah, so I'm sorry. Got lost. Yeah. So the raised crosswalks that have been promised is that unlike speed bumps and speed humps, which cause drivers to be really annoyed, and statistically across the country, after vehicles go over a bump or hump, they actually accelerate, which is the last thing we want. Whereas these speed tables with crosswalks up on top actually have really high compliance because it's intuitive. People understand they're slowing down for a crosswalk. They're only 3 inches high. They have an 8-foot approach ramp, a 10-foot table, and an 8-foot leaving ramp. And so you can still fly over them at high speeds, but it's not likely that you would be able to get airborne. So the county is very supportive of this. So we hope to get that in for those 2 crosswalks at least. So again, like we'd really hoped that the county would have been willing and understanding that for a walking village, you need to have a place for people to park and then walk. And the school doesn't have adequate parking, the village doesn't have adequate parking, but unfortunately that's done. So we need to look elsewhere. So again, that would be another project that we would really welcome some volunteers to help us pursue about how we might get more parking in the village. We definitely have some ideas, but we need to kind of spool up a project to pursue them. And we would really like to have some kind of bus shelter and some kind of public restroom that could be kind of gated off at night, so it doesn't attract people at night.
So what is that a picture of, that a structure there with?
It's just an example. It has restrooms and then a shelter,
Okay.
and it could have
Okay.
sliding barn door screens that would close it
Okay.
off, and it could have a water faucet or something to be for dogs
Okay.
and people to be able to have potable water
And
and a
the-
place to kind of.
The one below is the existing parking lot.
It's the
that's
existing
going
parking
away?
lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, when Kelly Lawrence decides to develop it. So, and the school pickup drop off, this is a daily occurrence where vehicles are going into the opposing lane, and unfortunately they know they're not supposed to be there, so they tend to accelerate, only making it more dangerous, because I've seen almost 4 almost head-on accidents where vehicles are doing that from both directions. And it's really unsafe. Aside from just if any emergency vehicles come by or anything. So, and people are getting very angry, which is not good either. People don't drive well when they're angry.
I time when I go through the village so that I'm not there during this freaking backup.
That's good. And we could put a electronic reader board down at Holualoa Junction and at Palani Junction, because there's no other way to get off the road once you're committed.
Right.
So we could have some kind of flashing to remind people before they're committed.
Yeah.
You know.
School's out. Don't
But it
come
would
up-
be better for them to stack up like a Disneyland queue, a stacking lane. Other schools do this. You know, there are a lot of historic schools in areas that don't have lots of room and places for people to be able to queue up.
What does that mean, Disneyland?
You know how they have those serpentine queues, right? That you go back and forth kind of on. The problem is a lot of schools only have like 10%. They think that's high. I think we have, because we're still only have 2 buses and we need 5. I think we have like 75%. I don't know, Maki, if you have a sense of that.
Oh, I don't.
Okay. But it's a lot of cars. We have about 500 students again this year.
Okay.
So phase 2, it would be from Paul's place at the Eamon Center. So that's what we'd really like to focus on for the rest of this session, about actually kind of getting into the fun of design details. So rather than going through all these, I've actually added slides with visuals so we can see where each of the areas are that really deserve some attention to make it safer for pedestrians. Before I continue, any comments or questions at this time?
Well, I just want to say, I think this is very well done, and very, very professional and, heartfelt, and people should pay attention to this. I mean, it's just amazing that you're doing this.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's a really nice group that's doing it. And we have people that participated in the Holualoa 2020 project that said as soon as they get free of their current commitments right at the moment, they'll join in again and help us move this forward. And we hope to get additional members of the community now that we have a track record that this really makes a difference. It's not some futile wish exercise, so that the county is willing and we really can get some of this stuff done if we can agree on a design that works for people, because it's complicated and there are trade-offs, especially as we go through the next part. The school zone was much easier. So first, before we get into it, effectively, why are we adapting our village? Why do we need to adapt our village safety? And why does it matter? Effectively, it used to not be a problem. Vehicles only drove about 25 miles an hour through the village. People walked mostly before World War II. Cars really only became common after the war. And then gradually, vehicles feel more entitled. Roads are only for vehicles, not pedestrians. And the vehicles in the last 20 years have been getting bigger and bigger and heavier, with more blind spots and longer stopping speed. So these numbers are actually low in the last few years. They haven't come up with a visual for the statistics, but it'd be actually higher for each of these categories of how many people are maimed or killed. But I was really amazed that national surveys are revealing that 42% of drivers nationally said that they don't consider going 10 miles an hour over the speed limit to be speeding. And data shows that drivers speed at least 10 miles an hour over the speed limit more than half the time they're behind the wheel. And even more shocking, 10% said they don't think 20 miles an hour over the speed limit is speeding either.
Oh my goodness.
So, and I noticed, because I do have that dynamic speed sign and it's pegged at 35 so they don't drag race and be able to see clock how fast they're going. There are a lot more, each year there are more and more vehicles that are pegging out at 35 mile an hour max and going through the village at 35 miles an hour. So, and effectively what that ends up being is pedestrians say, love Holualoa, too dangerous to go there and walk. So our businesses are all suffering, and we as residents are really suffering too. And there will be injuries and fatalities. It's just a miracle that it hasn't happened.
Auntie, what is a speed governor?
Oh, that's the future thing. And I think they're already available potentially on Teslas, but where they have electronic in the car and either sensors on the ground or it's programmed with GIS that they can't, like in an urban area, they cannot go over 25. Effectively, they can't go over the speed limit. You can step on the gas, but it won't go any faster. You can go slower,
Okay.
but you can't go faster. And that may end up being one of the very best ways to control the speeds, because we just can't possibly afford, and enforcement really doesn't work. You know, we have Popo alert, and when people put on Facebook is that there's police up in Holualoa, you know. So this is, now we can get into the design part. So there are 4 stretches between Paul's Place and the Old Government Road Junction that have issues. 3, currently there are vehicles parked without reserving space for pedestrians, but there may be room for a walkway and some parking. And we need to determine the ownership and collaborate on the best solution. And there's one place where it's narrow or no shoulder and it has a drop off. There are also 4 parcels that use the shoulder for parking instead of protecting pedestrians. And that's really one of the hardest, because you'll see what is the alternative. They have to choose between vehicles and pedestrians, which means anybody walking in as they park somewhere else. So that's one that is going to be hard to, I think, get consensus. So the first place is actually Paul's Place. There is room here. We measured it off to be able to have a 5-foot walkway and parking. There's also discussion of moving. It's much safer if the walkway is next to the building, so they're not in between vehicles pulling in and out and the travel lane. And if it's inside, it could have a curb so the vehicles won't pull in farther and block the walkway.
And too, that's what they do in Seattle now. They've
Yes.
they park the cars kind of out away from the curb, and then they put the bicycle lanes and the pedestrian lanes, so that that truck would be parked right next to the road, and then there would be a walkway right in front of Paul's Place.
Yeah, yeah. And because there's more room a little bit farther down, it is possible that Lance could say that he'd like to have it marked as a loading zone, you know, for truly loading and not park there. So there's some accommodation around that. It's true also, actually, if there was a curb in between the walkway, if it were here next to the building, it would also prevent some of the stormwater, because sometimes if it's flowing enough, it'll flow right up over his porch area into the store.
Have you talked to Paul about, about this at all?
To Lance. Paul passed away.
Oh, Lance? I mean, that's what I meant. Have you talked to Lance?
Yes, yes. Not since COVID. So I will, you know, meet with him specifically again. But he and Neil and I walked through the village, or through, you know, around his property and discussing options and stuff.
Okay.
So we want to validate that. What do you all think about where there is room of having the walkway? It is becoming kind of a more commonly adopted, as Mater says, standard.
I think it's a good idea. I mean, you see it, like I say, I see it in Seattle, and it, you know, not only does it kind of, in some ways, it slows traffic down when you have the cars parked closer to the edge of the road. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
absolutely.
When I'm driving down like 2nd Avenue, they completely changed that so that you have, you know, the parking is moved out and you have the bike lane, but you for some reason, I'm more cautious and I slow down with that configuration. So I think that might be a good idea, a good solution.
Oh, absolutely. When they're, you know, engineering includes things like obstructions. If they're planters, vehicles, walls, trees, all the things that post-World War II car culture, where you want lots of room, where vehicles can speed up and they're in a bubble. The modern thinking is almost reverse. Make it a little hazardous and get them to slow down intuitively.
I'd put a little curb along there. you know,
Yeah.
I think that
Okay.
I think it should be curbed off
Okay.
rather than just marked with paint or something.
Okay. There's also, I'll mention it again at the end, but there's also a great suggestion about either all the way or around the hazardous way of putting those rumble strips, the ones that are etched in, pressed in, or etched into the underneath the white line, and so they rumble as they go over it, which is effective.
I think that's a good idea too.
Yeah, Mimi, Jules, what do you think of putting where there's enough room for vehicles, even if it's tight, to put the walkway next to the building and not in between parking and traveling?
Well, it seems very efficient and logical. But what happens to the bicycle guys when they're coming down the road and that turns into poles?
If they want to go into poles?
No, well, right now it looks like a bicycle lane, right?
Oh, the shoulder. Yeah, the shoulder is really for pedestrians. They could drive down it. And if they wanted to stop, I mean, it's too narrow for vehicles back behind this truck by Dinah's, that they could park their bikes there.
And the county would do that?
Yeah, potentially. They may have minimum distances required, but yeah, they're open to ideas. And we can pull out, I think the standard parking, parallel parking width is
that's the most logical place, I think.
8 feet. So we would need 8 and 5, 13, 14 feet.
Oh, and you froze after Jules spoke.
Oh.
Do you mind repeating that?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I think the standard parallel parking is 8 feet wide. The pedestrian walkway is 5 feet wide, and you need a foot for the stripe. So that would be 14 feet wide minimum. So where there's that kind of room, the county should be open to putting that in with a little persuasion. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
So basically too, the whole purpose of this discussion is to be able to kind of think what we would like to envision for the village and then present that to the county. And they have the opportunity to say, yes, that will work because, or no, because, right?
Yes, and in that first in phase 1, the no because is usually tweaking it and making a few changes based on their experience and what is going on elsewhere. Because again, I think, like I said earlier, there's more compliance. People go along with the system if it's familiar and they see it and experience it elsewhere, which is why I asked all the shark's teeth to be removed, because that's not really standard and it was adding more visual noise and it was actually more confusing to people. It's great in big straightaways. I think there are even stretches in Washington and other parts of the country where they've adopted it, but it doesn't work on these little narrow pointy roads.
Oh, are you talking about that painted stuff that they put in the road that looks like
The
triangles?
zigzags. Yeah, the little zigzags. Yeah.
Now, what was the purpose of that?
Ron Teal, he's the national renowned expert of that, and he was the traffic chief for the county for many years, and that was his idea, to be able to call people's attention to something to pay attention to, only that wasn't clear to any of us.
I think it was stupid.
Well, it does work in straightaways, and I can actually pull up some pictures I took where in a long straightaway leading up to something, it actually can help because there aren't many distractions, and it's pretty obvious that you can see at the end of the pattern that there is something that they really need to be paying attention to. But here it
kind of looks,
you know, right place. Yeah.
Kind of looks junky to have all that out there.
Yeah, and the one thing that they do definitely all agree on nationally is that you need the minimal number of distractions, even if they're well intended. Okay. So the next one is moving up the road a little bit. And you can see on the map here, the little is showing where I was when I took a picture. Is the Superette, used to be the Little Mart, and is the apartment building. And so it too definitely has enough room if the parking is parallel or maybe even angled for the walkway to run next to the building.
Makes
So,
sense. I think that makes sense.
which is nice that it's not chopping back and forth, because when we come up to the next one, that could actually run all the way past Georgine's parcel and the Anaba Hotel. And if there is enough room by Georgine's, I'm not sure there is, or it could be parallel if we could get permission, because I think it's on her parcel. And it is true with all these, one of the very next tasks is that we need to find out from the county, because they did a survey, who owns the land under the shoulders. So is it right away and they can kind of do what they want with just notifying adjoining property owners, or is it actually private property that we need to be a little bit more careful legally to sort out what we can do? So as we move up past, is that Cinderella's that's on the north side of, yeah, Cinderella's is the blue building. So as you know, right before you get to Ala Maka'a, the shoulder is not 5 feet wide and it drops off. I think it's about 4 feet, just drops right off. So again, this would be one of those things that maybe we can do something with painting, and maybe we could put up some reflectors, short term, and then long term, maybe build it out and put a railing, a little guardrail up. I really worry during the night, First Fridays and the Music and Light Festival, because it's dark and a lot of distractions and noise and stuff. Again, I just am amazed somebody hasn't fallen over backwards down there that we've heard of. So before we head southbound, do you have any comments or questions?
I think that's a great solution along that. It seems like there's enough room, and it's not, it's right of way, isn't it? I mean, is it county? I mean,
We don't know.
Oh, we don't know. Okay.
We don't know. It's a combination.
Okay.
So we're in front of the Kona Hotel. When they surveyed that for the sale, the county right-of-way goes halfway to the porch.
Okay. So there's.
So they do have some private property, and that would be a thing. Anywhere we're swinging the walkway, it would have to have an ownership agreement. And in other jurisdictions, they do that. And we should have that for all the historic buildings encroachment anyway, that it goes both ways. That there's an encroachment lease, and the users promise to indemnify the owners against any liability. And,
Right.
And it's like renewed every year for $1, so that the using body, especially where it's a place where being able to guarantee that you still have it insured and they're protected.
You know, I think that would be really cool to be able to walk. I mean, that's one of the things that I've noticed about all of Mamalahoa. It's really hard, you know, you can't really walk along Mamalahoa anywhere.
Definitely not in a relaxed way, stroll and carrying on a conversation with somebody.
You have to
next
jump
you.
back and forth across the highway.
Yeah.
Even up by my farm. Yeah.
Okay. So it's kind of the same way going down the other way. There's one parcel that has narrow shoulders with a descending drop off right there. There are 2 additional parcels that there is room for vehicles to park, but they don't reserve space for the pedestrians. And there are 2 parcels that use the shoulder for parking instead of protecting the pedestrians.
So
the
how do
first-
you Antu, how do you determine ownership?
So the county did a survey, because the Mamalahoa is called an indeterminate right-of-way. It's so ancient that they platted out and got legal descriptions for the parcels, but not for the roadway, because the roadway was only about 10 feet wide. And then nobody really cared. Who cared where the property lines were? And then these parcels, so it goes in and out. as you go up the road through the village. So the county did it, and if they have a GIS layer so that you can put that down, see the plotting, you know, line, and then you have the layer on top of it like a satellite image
Okay.
that's registered properly, so you can actually see where the parcels are in relation, boundaries in relationship to where the roadway is.
Did you call it an indeterminate right of way?
Yeah, that's what the county calls it. Yeah, because normally when you plat it, you say, okay, so we're going to plat a roadway and it's going to be 60 feet wide or 120 feet wide. And so they do that. And then if they're, they either do that in their master plan, and there are some places that the county's actually done that, the Lee Parkway down just north of the Keoho Shopping Center that they haven't been able to build, that's reserved that way. They were able to acquire that land, and so it's, I think, a 60-foot right of way through there if
Okay.
they are able to eventually build some kind of road. Okay. So the first one is the triangle lot that's north of Ipu Gallery, up where the junction is, and this is the Eamon Center. Whoops, I'm in the wrong map. Eamon Center over here. And so on this, you can see up at the very beginning, southbound here, that there's a drop off. The coffee trees are down. I think it's about 5 feet below the roadway, and there's not 5 foot of shoulder there. As you get a little bit closer to the curb, you can potentially cut the foliage back, but since you can't get to it without crossing the road, it's kind of questionable. And actually the blocking foliage is actually kind of deters people from speeding around that corner when they're northbound, if they're paying attention. So again, that would be something to kind of sort out. So then as we get to the Holualoa Coffee Shack, there is 15 feet, I believe, between the white line and the wall, down in front of the restaurant for at least part of the distance. But up by the coffee shack itself, there is not 15 feet. So it could be that we swing the walkway with permission against the wall there so they at least can have some parallel parking. Would be really nice. And I'll talk about later that plans and Neil thought it was a good idea to put a crosswalk here because a lot of people do park down that roadway, I think, even though it's a private roadway, and then walk up and cross. So that would be good. This is the really difficult one, and I would love it if you have any ideas or if you think about it. So with the post office, 90-degree spaces are really problematic. The drivers cannot see the road at all. If you have angle parking, it's much safer to do back end parking where they're actually reversed, right? So you go up past the parking and then you back up into it. But there isn't really room here even for diagonal parking. There's really only room for a couple parallel spaces, but it's such a slope that it's a real effort. Nobody in anything but the most powerful wheelchair or strong legs could actually walk up if the walkway were in front of the post office. So here it may be parallel spaces and the walkway has to be right next to the road for that distance until you close the post office.
So is there any plan to close the post office?
There's always plans. Every time there's a Republican administration, they want to privatize the postal service and they want to close a whole bunch of post offices. They want to close the historic one in Lahui on Kauai when Trump was in office, but the community rose up and made big stink, and they decided to save the building and keep it open as a post office. So that's, we ship a lot of coffee out of this post office, so it's a revenue generating post office. But it's one that we need to keep in touch with Julie, that if she hears anything, she needs to whisper in our ears that they're making noises again. And rise up. And there are ways of organizing and making a very public stink about that so we can keep it open. If there was another place to put it that wasn't such a problematic location, that would be cool. It is on private property. It's not post office, USPS owned, it's only leased.
So, but
Yeah.
if we propose a parallel parking, how many cars could fit there? Not very much.
Not very many. It would be really problematic.
Yeah, so it would be a big problem.
Yeah. Unless we could buy a lot real close on Government Road or something to turn into parking. That would be just a very short. And then there would be, and again, it could be, you know, I don't know, some kind of drive-through, or it's just a problem. So if you could think about it, at the very least, what we would like to do would be just mark the 5-foot walkway, I guess. If we can
Maybe,
do that.
maybe it could, now that the theater burned down, maybe that could be parking.
I don't know how you get in and out. It's a tiny lot.
Okay.
It's also a flood zone,
Yeah.
Okay.
so a pavement might be problematic.
Well, it couldn't be impervious. Yeah. But yeah, I agree. It's just so tight. I just don't. But keep it open as a possibility to just think about.
Okay.
Oh, I
Thank
imagine
you.
the first step would be the crosswalk moving that one's feasible to work
Yes.
with the county now and leave everything as is because we can fit more cars right now.
Mhm.
You know, it's like lining up all the possibilities before we switch that. If
Right.
we can even find a property close enough, right? Because if people have boxes and packages, you're carrying loads of stuff.
Mhm.
It would just be hard if it's not right in front of the building.
Mhm. This pear area next to it is mostly all part of the post office. The in between the food trailers, the pin for the front corner of Barbara Hanson's, you know, well, Karen Chef's parcel is actually halfway in. It's way in that lot. It's about right on the second parking space. It's about right there. So it could be possible to, I don't know, figure out some kind of better configuration to be able to squeeze in another car or two there. Back end angle parking, we might be able to add a space or two, and then maybe it's just only the postal workers that could park back there. I don't know, but they have to leave the first space here for the delivery trucks to be able to drop off and pick up the stuff. It's a nasty setup. But as you say, Maki, we can move this crosswalk, and we might be able to do some angle parking in to be able to, at least where it's back end parking, where it'd be a little bit safer, where they're not backing right into the pedestrians or the travel lane.
Right, and potentially the crosswalk at Holualoa, if they're okay with that, and then this one next in front of our Studio 7, that potentially should slow traffic, right? Calm traffic, which would just change the whole tango dancing in and out of the parking a lot better, to not hear that screeching rubber tire sound.
Absolutely.
Possible accident. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so as Maki just kind of mentioned, there's potentially 2 additional crosswalks. We could put one up at the junction, and that really signals drivers as they come in and they, you know, get the reduction of speed down to 25. There's a really clear reason. You know, there's the sign here for the village, and then also if there was a crosswalk there, that would help. And if anyone walked up this way, they could cross over to Eaton Center, or if they parked in Eaton Center parking lot, they come down that way and be able to walk down safely. So that would be one thing. And then let me talk about the other crosswalk, and then have you tell me what kind of your priorities would be. Oops, I'm sorry. The next one would be, as Maki said, right on the north side of Alamaka'a, and it would go over to the coffee shack here. And that would be, that's a gradual enough slope that as long as we can double check that the water runoff wouldn't be a problem as it kind of hits that. It'll go over it if it's really running, but it would tend to slide to the side if it's a light flow. But we have a lot of people that do cross right there. So do you have a sense, are both those crosswalks make sense to you? Only one or neither?
They both absolutely make a lot of sense. That is my natural safety path.
Okay.
I
I'll
agree.
second that, both sides.
Okay. Okay. It's amazing how expensive that thermal tape is to put down, you know, the stuff that lasts here in Hawaii, and still it only lasts for a certain number of years. But I think that this is so important. We can advocate it, and they may say that they need to do it in phases. But we can just keep pushing until, can we have the next one now? Okay, so the next one is the moving of the poles. So it's really dangerous, as we've been talking about. The crosswalk's in a very hazardous, you can't see it if you're driving southbound until you're actually around the curve here, right on top of it. And since vehicles do speed around there, it's just a miracle that we don't have fatalities on a weekly basis. And on one side, as you can see, on one side you can see that the crosswalk, as you know, ends in a parking space on the post office side, and it ends in a parking space on Paul's side. So it's just, and I'll just, you've heard me say before, yeah, I will run line it. If I want to get something at Paul's and pick up something at the post office, I will still walk across there most days. But if it's low light level or I'm not feeling particularly sprightly, I'll walk up to the crosswalk and cross. And definitely for all the visitors and tourists, there's an implied concept nowadays that if there's a crosswalk, it's safe. It's been deemed safe by the jurisdiction. And so the county is eager to move this one. It can't be on a crosswalk because of that stormwater flow issue, and the water would come down the hill and unfortunately go right down in between Paul's Place and Lance's and Mononoe. So how do you all feel about moving the crosswalk?
Absolutely a yes.
Yep, I support that.
Okay.
I
Mimi,
do.
Jules?
Yep,
Yeah,
we
Okay.
support that.
Okay. So the signage, so we would move it here, and then the idea would be that we need better signage, both for the crosswalk and for the curve. And so I haven't checked these particular signs lately, but effectively, as you're by, this is Georgine's empty parcel here, and this is the road in Limbo that goes down to Cassandra Hayes, and this is where the little superette, the apartment building is. There's a telephone pole right here, so it would be probably a good location to put a sign, because there's already that obstruction that basically announces that there is a curve and that there's a pedestrian crossing coming up, and these can have flashing lights, or there actually could be one of those round flashing lights that would flash at night just to alert people. Those are all within guidelines. And then as you come to the curve and just right in front of you, somewhere along right here, having a sign on this side of the road showing that there is a curve and an intersection coming up. And then where the crosswalk is, there would be the pedestrian crossing assembly. And that it's outside a school zone, so I don't know if it will have the big buttons, but it potentially can have something that has some kind of flashing light to get people's attention. To me, it's like it'd be nice to have both, but it could be one or the other that's lit at night. Any comments about this part?
I like the idea of legally able to have some sort of flashing light at night. We do have a lot of drunk drivers, and you know, my dad's truck has been
Mm,
into, yeah, we've had some accidents, which is the reason why our gallery, I've left the Christmas lights on all
Mm.
year. And it's on
mhm,
timer, because it just gives, because we're right around that curve, and I'm
mhm.
hoping that helps just people slow down, normal sober people slow down. But I think just a little blinking light, it just gives a little bit more visual at night.
Mm.
Yeah, so I like that idea.
Okay. Any other comments? This is where you can be the loyal opposition and kind of shoot holes and things too.
And to in Seattle, you know, we have some, like up on Capitol Hill on Denny, we have some really major arterials, and then people, there's no stoplights, but people are crossing the street. And so they push a button and these lights start flashing, you know,
Mhm.
and you have to, I mean, that gets your attention. You definitely stop and let them cross. So I don't know if that's a standard fare in Hawaii, but we're seeing more
Yeah,
and more of that here.
it is in the school zones, and we have them at the crosswalks. That's why I'm calling the big button. They have the little button that you push to get the
Yes.
lights to go on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So they're standard for school zones. They're quite expensive. So I don't know if the county would agree to putting them here, at least
Okay.
initially, but we can definitely ask. And to Maki's point, you know, having some kind of light, and whether it's just a blinking light or something, you know, it can be even a round light up here to show, or only come on if somebody's crossing, or both actually. And the other one that I wanted to ask y'all is, they don't always patrol at night to see if the street lights are on or off, you know, if they burnt out. So, and I'm not out at night. So if any of you happen to be going through Holualoa at night and see any of the street lights, because we do have lights, I believe there's a street light on the pole that's right here, and there's a street light right somewhere right around the intersection here, as well as, yeah, you know, there are about 8 of them going down through the village. So
Okay.
that was another reason for moving that one crosswalk to by the library, because that light has a street light, so it's illuminated at night too, which is really important. Okay, well, let's see. Oh, we're getting short in time. So we're getting near the end too. So here's the problem. So we get our walking shoulder pathway, and people ignore it because they don't understand, or they don't care, or they're too inconvenienced, or don't know where to park, or we don't have alternatives places to park. Lots of reasons. And they still park on the shoulder. So the standard solution by the county is to put up no parking, no stopping, no parking signs. And I think it's like they have to be visible between them. So they're either 200-foot spacing or closer if there's a curve, which would be about 26 signs through the village, which is real. There's a trade-off. It's real noise pollution. It disrupts the visual landscape for the historic village, and it's more distraction for drivers. So it has a trade-off. So an alternative that the county doesn't like is like curbs or bollards, like down by what they have at Konawaina. And maybe we could do a combination or something in the more hazardous areas, or something, do the curbs or out in front of the historic buildings, and then have signs in the other areas. Do you have any sense on what might work for this problem?
Well, my thought is those are kind of ugly signs, you know, and to have those all over Holualoa is like kind of, I go for more for the curbs.
I agree.
Okay.
Me too. And if we have to do a combination, I'm curious to know how it looks like too. I can't visualize it. But
Maybe
yeah,
one, or, you know, maybe a couple, but not like,
yeah, these signs are hideous.
Oh yeah, it wouldn't be this particular one. The county has a kind of a standard Well, actually, there's some right by Holualoa, and that's stopping the parking. So I'll snag that picture. I'll also snag for the next session the example of curbs at Conawaina and up in Waimea. They have on the road that goes between, is it the school or the park or something, that they've got curbs without sidewalks. So a couple examples of that too. And the rumble strips, I forgot to add that slide. Okay, thank you. So effectively, this is the end. So at this point, it's a grassroots effort, and we're cumulatively adding everybody's mana'o and ideas and concerns and building this up. It'll actually become kind of the deliverable. It was really worked for the guys in Hilo to be able to visually see what we're proposing and see what the situation is. Most of those people are not familiar with Holualoa. And so we have another session on Wednesday, next Wednesday, the 7th at 5, using the same link, and the following Thursday, the 15th at 5:30, trying to get different days of the week and different time. And of course, you guys are kind of all, you can contact us, and we really appreciate the efforts. The county keeps saying that it's really important to be very transparent and inclusive, which we want to do anyway, but also it helps if somebody claims that they hadn't heard, they hadn't been consulted, they hadn't been notified, and they really have a problem with it, of kind of delaying or having the county back away from implementing any of this stuff. So.
Have we asked Becca to come to any of these, or would that be helpful, or?
Oh, absolutely. I think what we probably will do, she knows that we're doing this.
Okay.
We'll definitely invite going through, we might schedule, we were talking about, it might be actually, I'll see if she's available on Thursday the 15th, because we should have a pretty finished deck at that
Great.
point. And then
Mhm.
that way the following week, I think it is, that the HBO meeting is, then we can just kind of validate it.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And then move forward.
Thanks
Thank
for
you.
putting-
It's good.
Thanks for putting together this PowerPoint. It's awesome.
Oh, well, thank you. The visuals, it really helps, doesn't it?
Definitely.
Seeing what is and then kind of what we're trying to talk about. So we have about 4 more minutes. If you want any closing comments or anything.
Well, I can't think of any, I'm just grateful that that we're all here doing this together and trying to move this forward, and especially for your leadership. And Mimi and Jules, I haven't met you, but I hope to meet you one of these days. I'll be in and out of Holualoa over the next year. And
Well, look us up when you come to town.
okay, I will. That would be wonderful.
Yeah,
I
get
would-
our phone number from Antu.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
We'll have
Mimi
a
and
pow-
Jules. Oh,
Thank you, Antu.
Thanks
Okay.
for everything.
Thank you, everybody.
thank you all. Have a
Thank
good
you.
evening.
All right.
Aloha.
Thank
Get
you.
the post office.
Bye-bye.